Welcome to Hashtag with Navguzi Chwanuka. This is a place where we help you unravel social constructs, discuss self-development in line with mental health, emotional well-being, and everything in between that directly or indirectly affects us in the millennial world around us. If you're hearing my voice for the first time and are the kind of person who is not scared of being a better version of yourself even if it requires you to contradict who you were 24 hours ago, consider this your virtual home. I'm your host, Navguzi Chwanuka, and I cannot wait to engage with you in the various conversations. Thank you so much for joining me for episode 89 of Hashtag with Navguzi Chwanuka. This Wednesday, we have Mona Herbert. Mona is a mental health enthusiast, among other things. And in this episode, he highlights how the combination of finding the right help, change of lifestyle, mindfulness, and time has a positive impact on our mental health. If anything resonates with you during our conversation, share with us on social media with the hashtag HTNKInsation. Here's our episode. Mona Herbert, welcome to Hashtag with Navguzi Chwanuka.
Thank you. Thanks for hosting me. Thanks for having me.
The first time I heard the name, I thought it was a nickname like Mona. Mona Lisa.
Exactly.
A man.
Yes. That qualification always comes naturally.
Yeah.
And whenever I used to communicate with my colleagues, especially in Europe, I've always worked in Uganda my entire professional life. But when I used to talk to my colleagues in Europe, I send emails, and then when they come back, they're saying Mrs. And I always have to say politely, it's Mona, yes? And I don't mind you adding the Lisa, but it happens to be a man. Yeah.
Where is it from?
Well,
do we look at it as a surname?
Yes, absolutely. And it's a unique name. I mean, when I was born, my father wanted to give me his name. My father's name is Sensamba. Ultimately, that son...
wait. Hold on. You're Muganda? I'm
a Munyoro. But recently when I was talking to my brother, my elder brother, and my dad about our family tree, he actually told me, your grandparents came from the Lost Counties.
Kochi.
So when we look back, actually, we have Aganda from that part, but then our grandparents moved to Bunyoro, I think, when the monarchies were fighting, always Bunyoro, Buganda, and the like.
Yeah.
So that's the long history. I don't have the entire history for the place, but long story short, my dad gave me the name, so I'm told. His name is Sensamba. And when, because my mom really came into the marriage really late, so I had my stepmom, and I think there was some kind of friction. Why is it that this young boy gets to have your name? That's what I was told. So I think my grandmother kind of played a neutral card. And it's okay. Just give him a name. Let's call him Mona.
Are you serious?
Or Bona. And then later on I said, but what does the name mean? Because it's really different from when you say Sensamba, Matovu, Yiga, Sebukera, and those are all my brothers. And then you say Mona. That doesn't sound even related. And she said, well, it's a very unique name. It means all our children. And I think...
In what language?
I think I don't know whether it's Runyoro, where they say Bonabana or Bonabana. All our children. But then I grew up, everyone was calling me Mona, so I took the short version of it. And that's okay. And I grew to like it because it's a unique name.
It's really unique.
Yes.
I kept looking back like, for real? Why is he the one speaking? They're calling Mona. They're like, that's his name. I was like, oh.
Yes.
So for anyone that has not heard of Mona Herbert, please introduce yourself.
Okay. My name is Mona Herbert, and I'm a Ugandan. I love music, church music.
Specifically church.
I mean, I listen to all kinds of music. I love all the music, but I say closely follow church music, choral music, because I sing in church. I'm Catholic. I sing in the 10 o'clock choir for Christ the King. And I think that choir and maybe Namirembe Cathedral Choir and a few that I wouldn't know really are the few choirs that really pay a lot of respect to choral, classical music and the like. So it's a bit unique when you listen to the music that we do. But yeah, it's really very nice music and I love cooking. I'm not a person who really fancies traveling a lot, but when the opportunity comes, I jump at it. I'll be very honest.
What's wrong with traveling?
No. I mean, whenever you ask people, what do you like, hobbies and the like, a lot of people will throw in their travel and the like.
A lot
of people.
Is it?
If you do the sampling, but when the chance comes, I do it. But I love communities. I'm a communal person, and now I'm married with children. I like family time.
Yeah,
I love cooking and the like. So that's me. And I think I was lucky that when I was young, I think it was around in senior 3, senior 4 that I really started thinking, but if I finish education, if I even go ahead with education, what is it that I want to do, really? I wasn't so sure, but I always kind of looked at the people who work in media, and I think for me the platform was a bit attractive. These people out there, they talk to masses, they have these platforms in front of them. I'm not even sure I had a complete figuring out of what it was, but I was kind of carefully gearing towards that. And by the time I finished my A-levels, I think I had my mind made up. Right. Actually, so when I finished my A-levels, that was quite of a bit of a struggle socially, because that was my mom alone taking care of us, and going through school was tough and the like. So sometimes you had to be in school, sometimes you have to struggle a little bit to help mom so that she can find the money to send you to school, and that was fine. But I knew once I finished my finals that I had to immediately kind of help her with her work, but at the same time, not to spend so much time around, think of how I want to start on that journey of doing media. So as my friends went for vacation, senior 6 people always looked forward to this almost 1 year of vacation.
Yeah.
I think I only took like a month off, and then I had to find, okay, what options do I have? And at that time, I found an institute called, I think, International Institute of Media Studies on Bombo Road. And then immediately I followed that. I just went in there. They registered me and they said, okay, if you're entering at this level, you have to do a certificate, then an advanced certificate, then a diploma, but then they'll come in sequence. And I said, yeah, show me where to sign up. Yeah, because then I was already kind of determined. And I found that kind of training very helpful and very promising, because for me, everything that we were learning every day, you could see how you can apply that.
Right.
It speaks a lot to our education when you see young people who go through universities and they're still not so sure what it is that they want to do.
Exactly. There's a guest I had on the podcast, and she said that throughout her university, she was doing BB, Bachelor's Business Administration.
Okay.
Yes, and she didn't know. She had no single idea of what she was going to do after the university. And I was like, you're kidding.
Yeah, that tends to happen. And that's why when I was talking about my experience with this course in journalism, I found it fascinating that in the first 3 months, we already knew how to write a story. They tell you whenever you open a newspaper, or if you're listening to radio, if you're listening to a news bulletin on TV in the evening, this is what's going to happen. And you could really see it. 6 months into the course, we were already writing pieces that had the potential to actually run in the papers. And actually, by the end of 6 months, some of us wrote news pieces which were featured in the papers, because again, that to me proved to be very productive. Some of the lecturers, if not most, were working in these media agencies, so they could train you, and then we knew exactly where to go for story pieces, and then they surprise you when you write a piece and the next day it's in the papers. But the downside to it was that the excitement that we got, because we now said, oh, now they're publishing us, oh, they're running our stories, we would always now begin to kind of dodge classes, and we're supposed to be students.
Oh, like, I've arrived?
Yeah, I've arrived, so I need to go. I need to be out there in the field looking for stories and writing them. So we had to kind of be brought back in line and say, guys, you're supposed to do your theory part and your training here and the studying, which was really helpful. But yeah, that for me was the journey, and I continued on developing my media skills. After International Institute of Media Studies, I actually got invited to work with UBC. Then it was UTV. Damn. Because again, when I was in
How many years ago is that?
That was around coming to the end of the 90s, really. And I mean, I looked at people like Barley Francis, the holy grail of newscasting, but that wasn't where I wanted to go. I just wanted to find other people within TV, do interesting programs. And when we went there for training and trying out things, they selected some of us and they said, but you can do this, you can do that. What can you do with these ideas? And I remember this one day, I went and I found the person who was the chief producer for entertainment programs and drama in UTV. He's gone now from this world. The late George Sengendo, excellent mentor and teacher. And he asked me, Mona, what do you want to do if I gave you 10 minutes? And I said, well, I could talk about entertainment in this city. I could talk about entertainment in this country. And then he said, okay, go and do some research and come back and show me exactly what you would talk about. Yeah. And I was so excited. I went and did that and I came back and he took me to the studios and I did a run. I did it the second time. And then he told me, okay, have you seen a program called The Saturday Variety Show? I said, yes. He said, okay, next Saturday come here and I'm going to talk to the rest of the team.
Hold up. This is all happening at UTV?
Yes.
UTV had other programs?
Yeah, they had other programs. they had a lot of programs, by the way.
Oh my goodness. I only remember TV used to come on at,
in the
was
evening.
it 5?
Yeah, that was when we were all still young and
the moment it would get on, I think we had Cartoon Network starting.
Exactly. Telematch.
So I don't understand. There were other programs?
Yes.
And at 10 p.m., there are lines.
Absolutely. There was always that key. At 5, you'd actually just be looking at not even these color bars and the like. They would come on a bit later. But no, as we were progressing towards mid-90s, going to the end of the 1990s, crossing over 2000, programming changed. And then the
same
timelines.
Time I'm talking about.
Yeah,
that's when we were watching cartoons.
Yeah, but at that time there were other programs because the program I speak to now particularly would always run and live on Saturday in the morning up to midday.
Wow.
That's the first program that I was invited to do and I participated in that. And of course that gave me an opportunity to look what else I could do. Mm-hmm. I then joined the education department where I did a lot of programming with young people. And the beauty was that in doing these programs, I interacted a lot with organizations that were doing a lot of programs for young people from the development side, I must say.
Yeah.
And I think that was now what really began to be the formative years of my later career because, yes, I worked from the around 1997, 98 in TV, but by the year 2000, I was switching over and leaving because as I worked more with organizations in development work and the like, I found this field to be so fascinating. And I did a certain program when they were removing street children off the streets, and we had to do a lot of PR. So I did this documentary with the British Council. And at the end of the day, someone saw this.
Now I feel like I had to Google you.
Yeah, I did this documentary, and someone from GIZ saw it, and he happened to be a technical advisor working with the Ministry of Gender. And then he asked these people at the British Council at the launch that who did this work? And they were gracious enough. They found my contacts and they handed over to him, Dr. Jessen Wolfgang. He invited me. He called me and he invited me and said, look, I need to talk to you. So I went to his office, talked to him, and he said, straight up, this is what's happening. I work with the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development. You know this ministry? I said, yes. I've been doing a lot of work in the Children and Youth Department, and I'm always into finding out what the government is doing, and I think this is the go-to ministry. And he said, absolutely. And he said, we do a lot of work on policies. We do a lot of work with programs. We do a lot of work up country, and we work with other sectors in the country. But it's sad. People don't know what we do. So he said, I looked at your documentary, the way you took this stigmatized element of street children and their plight, and you put a positive spin to it. Yeah. So I would love to invite you to give me ideas of how we can really promote the work that we do as a ministry. And I said, okay, I'll work on a proposal, present it. Long story short, I did that. He called in the top shots of the ministry. They looked at it during their retreat. They liked my proposal and he said, okay, can you come and work with us as a consultant? Right. And I went into the ministry to work and I was handed a GIZ contract. I did that. But a year or so into the work, he asked me that, can you join our team permanently? Yeah. And shortly before I started doing that work, actually, I was invited to the Netherlands through the RNTC. That's, I think, Radio Netherlands Training Center to do a 3.5-month course, Education Broadcasting for Children and Youth. And that was my first time to travel to Europe. So I went to him, called him, said, look, you've given me a contract, but then I have this scholarship that I want to pursue and do this. I said, no, Mona, go and do it. It's 3.5 months. When you come back, we'll just do a contract extension. Excellent. So I was really grateful to him to give me that allowance. So I went, did the training, came back. But I can tell you the professionalism I saw in this training when we were in RNTC in the Netherlands. When I came back, it was really clear that I couldn't work under our normal circumstances in Uganda, because I can tell you, as a person who was working in TV then, we used to run a one-man crew. You go with a camera in the field, you have a tripod, you're doing everything. Sometimes you shoot yourself, and sometimes you have... It was madness, sheer madness. But then we loved the work.
Sometimes you shoot yourself. How sure are you that the thing is not recording anymore?
That's the thing, and we used to do it. And we really tried. We had smart ways of how to do it. But the point is, it was really a struggle. And then you would come back, sit down, take all your material, your raw material, and then you go and you edit a program, and then you run it. You ensure that it runs. The downside to it is that when you cross over to Europe to see how work is done professionally, I mean, at the end of the training, I was given like an 8-man crew to just do my project, my final project shoot.
Right.
And that was my first time to learn that in Europe, there are all these seasons: winter, summer, autumn. And at the time when I did my final project, it was full autumn. There wasn't a single leaf on the trees. They were all like skeletons standing in Europe. And they told us to do our final project, look back, think home. So I was shooting a story that I had developed for my final project, and it was set in Mabira Forest in Uganda, only to realize later on that I don't have a single green tree in the Netherlands. And I was screaming at the top of my head. The course administrator was like, Mona, calm down, please breathe. Just explain to me what your problem is. And I told him, I don't see a green forest. I'm in trouble. And said, no, breathe. And then a week later, he calls me to his office and he says, tomorrow, clear your schedule because you're going on a day trip. We are taking you to a greenhouse. I think it's the perfect location for your shooting. So I will go there the following morning with my entire crew, people who are there listening to everything you're saying. And for the first time, I saw the biggest greenhouse in the world. So I'm told, because I entered this place and it had real trees inside.
A greenhouse.
Huge trees inside. A greenhouse. Yes.
Trees.
Yes. Really, really huge. So big. It's in the Netherlands. And that was for me. I mean, I looked at all this. I was grateful. I was happy. But at the same time, as I finalized my project, thinking of going home, I'm happy. I felt that coming back home to the one-man crew and the like was so demoralizing. For me, that was something
it just didn't work.
Yeah, it was not going to work. So I came home with the idea that, I have all this knowledge. I can work with it, but not under the circumstances when I left.
Right.
So when I came back, I had all this work waiting for me to work with the ministry. And I continued that. Later on, they said, can you work with us full time? And to be quite honest, that somehow encouraged me to wrap up my media work, which I love very much, and the ideas. But I said, okay, if I'm going to go and work as a development person, maybe become a development work expert, I will still carry my background in media and always use it. And it has proved to be very, very helpful because I did the work, later on developed a passion for advocacy, and I think my media communications background helped a lot in that. Yeah. So I've used it to do a lot of advocacy. I worked with GIZ for years and then moved on to another German organization, a CSO, but with a country office in Uganda. And that's when we started advocacy on maternal health, advocacy on family planning, sexual and reproductive health for young people. Yeah. And it was really, rewarding work. Yeah, up until towards the end of 2018, beginning 2019, that's when I worked full time. And then at some point I said, okay, I need to take a break, kind of re-energize myself and then see how I want to really bring these two worlds together. And that's where I'm working towards right now. How can I use media to really advance advocacy? And it would depend. It can take different interests and the like. But at the same time, I think the beauty is when you do advocacy work, you realize very quickly that I need to work with a community of people who believe in the stuff that I do. And then that's what makes it fun, because you bring all the ideas on the table and then you see how can we use all this material, all this information to influence the decision makers and the people who are actually charged to take responsibility over certain issues and really rally their voices.
Right.
Yeah.
So last month, when we were talking, or rather wrapping up the training, we had a mini chat.
Yes.
And you talked about how you were invested in knowing why I chose mental health as a niche for my podcast. And you went on to share just a little bit, and I had to stop you. I was like, hold that. We are going to have microphones.
Yes.
To capture that. What communicated to you the very first time you had the word mental health?
Taking it to that exact point that you just raised, when we were invited to this communications training to talk about podcasts and the like, okay, we said fine, because at the moment I work with an organization where I'm an advisor in terms of communications and advocacy, like I said. And this organization, White Ribbon Alliance, they focus on maternal health and newborns. That's their passion as an organization, and we are part of a consortium of organizations that are being supported by a US-funded program. So when we came there, our expectation was we are being given all these technical skills in communications, specifically audio and podcasts and the like, and you were mentioned as the expert who is going to be talking to us. We said, that's really
get
great.
Out until we said,
Yes. Because Maurice was telling us this is a great person and she has done podcasts and the like. So we said, oh, that's going to be fun. And you know, that's the thing about this work. It's very engaging. But then when you mentioned that your podcast, your specific podcast really talks and has a particular focus on mental health, for me, that was like a bulb. Why? Because this is a subject that I feel personally, outside everything else, that I want to pursue as much as possible. So that, and I take a particular interest because personally, when I woke up one day and I realized that I had an issue, I would call it a mental health issue, as I came later on to learn and discover, I asked myself, I went back and I sat and I said, if I have this problem and it has taken me this long to realize that I have an issue and I'm in what I would really call a privileged space or privileged position, what is really going on in my community? And I think, again, it's one of those antennas that I carry, that for me, I'm interested in advocacy. When we talk about young people and pregnancy, you know what happened in Uganda during COVID, the lockdown. All the young people went back home, and then we had these escalating numbers of teenage mothers, and that's a problem now we are faced with. So I thought mental health, the discovery for me was a big deal, and then starting to ask myself, what is it that we can do to really maybe change the narrative, to change the picture? So when you told me that you do a podcast on this, I felt like I wanted to tell you what I'm thinking. I wanted to tell my story, and so that maybe it can kind of resonate with what it is that you do, and maybe somehow it can create a change. The change that I yearn, that people can take this up more and more. Yeah.
From a personal experience, when did it ever occur to you that, oh my goodness, I'm struggling mentally? How did you come to that place of awareness?
Exactly. And it's actually an interesting story. Taking you back to my last full-time, I would call it my last full-time employment. That was, which came to a close around 2018. But before that, several years, going back to those 4 or 5 years before, and work was normal. As always, you go to work, you meet your colleagues, you do your work, you're really encouraged by what you're doing. Our work also involved a lot of traveling, both in country, but most of the times we would always go out of the country, in the region, in Africa, in Europe, sometimes the States and the like. It actually kind of reminds me some of our colleagues who are into programming and not advocacy. They always said advocacy people, they always get to travel and the like. But for me, doing the work was really fun, but there was always these things that would come up because work sometimes involves a lot of demands, pressure, and beyond the work, sometimes it's your social life and the like, and it's all integrated, it's all intertwined. And everything to you might look normal, but at the same time, there is less decompressing, but more of whatever you're taking up. And I reached a point where I was beginning to have struggles in terms of sometimes you feel like you have all these body weaknesses. Sometimes you feel like you're really sick.
Right.
Sometimes you feel like you're not motivated to do the things that you've always wanted to do. And I would always go and say, no, let me just go and do a consultation. Maybe I have malaria. Maybe I have this or the other. And every time I would go see a doctor, they do all the blood work, they run the tests and the like, and they tell you, we don't see anything. And that went on for quite a while.
So you kept going to different...
Yeah, I reached a point where I really had to kind of go for, what do you call it usually? For other opinions to other doctors.
Exactly.
Yeah. So you could always at some point say, maybe I should try out another doctor. Maybe, and this also comes from friends if you tell them, well, I've been seeing my doctor usually, but whenever I go there, they don't see anything. They say, maybe try and go and see this other doctor. So yeah. So with that kind of, it was slowly but surely getting to a point where I was beginning to seriously question myself. If my doctors do their diagnosis and I feel sick and they're not seeing anything, then what's going on? I remember this particular...
Was there a moment where you feel like I'm doomed?
Yeah.
I'm going to die.
Actually, worse than that, because I remember this particular day. I can't remember the date, but it was a day when I had to take my kids for a sports day. And we were going to Kabira, I think, International School. That's where the sports activities were. So I think they had hired out or asked permission to use their grounds. So that's where we went. But halfway going there, I really started feeling the symptoms. Now I had learned exactly what I feel. I always start off by feeling weak in the joints, and then you feel a fever coming on. And then I had now kind of reached a point where I was living with these headaches that are non-stop, and the headache was setting on, but I was taking them to school, and by the time I reached there, I was so weak, and they came out of the car, and then I told them with their mom that, you know what, I need to go and see a doctor. And then my wife asked me, do you need, I think I can hand them over to the teachers and then I can drive you to hospital. And I said, no, you stay with them. I'm just going to take a boda.
Was it a place of, it's a moment of urgency?
Yeah, I really wanted to see a doctor because all these effects were coming on, and I was really feeling a fever. So I needed to go to hospital. And I was hopeful that maybe with this seriousness of what I'm feeling in my body,
it's not going to be found.
They'll find out something. So I decided to go and see a doctor. So I took a boda and then went to Kampala Hospital. And it was a swift ride with a boda. So when I got there, I was assigned to this female doctor, relatively young, really. So she said, oh, Mona, what's happening? So I was so weak to a point I couldn't even talk. And I decided to just lie on the bed where I was being diagnosed. And she said, you know what, stay here, and we're going to do the blood work and draw some blood. But if you're feeling that you need to rest, take a rest here now. And I told her, yeah, but the problem is my head is almost busting. It's really hurting. So they gave me this medication which dissolved in water, and it really helped. It kind of helped with the headache. I don't know what tablet that was. It helped with the headache. Like in a few minutes, the headache came down. But I was feeling so weak. So I decided, okay, let me do the blood work. And I think with the medication they gave me, I actually ended up taking a nap for like 2 hours.
Whoa.
Yeah. And when I woke up...
The thing they put, was it fizzy?
No.
They put the thing, the medication they put in the water, that's what made you black out for 2 hours?
No, the medication they gave me they put in water was really for the headache because it was really extreme and it worked. But I felt so weak that I needed to rest, and my temperature was really, really high. So they told me, we need to bring your temperature down and then we'll see. At the same time, let's do your blood work. So they did all that, and I think I took a nap. So when I woke up, I was really much better. The fever had kind of calmed down. The headache wasn't really as bad. And so the doctor came back with the results from the blood work. And then she sat down and said, okay, Mona, I've really done an extensive blood work and I've done diagnosis. And she said, unfortunately, I don't see anything. That for me was the first time when I really had this, I don't know whether people really get that desperate, but I was desperate. And in my mind, I was like, I wish she could say something to me, however bad. I don't care, even if she said, Mona, unfortunately, whatever it is, it's really bad, it's fatal or whatever. I wished for that at that point.
You were ready for the news.
Because it was so strange for the doctor to tell me they don't see anything, but me as a person in this body, I was really sick. The strange part was it comes and then it goes. And at that point, I wasn't feeling so bad when she was telling me. I was actually ready to kind of walk out. And actually after
after the 2 hours of sleeping.
Yes. After talking to her, I managed to walk out very confidently. And when I went back to meet my children, my family, they were like, but when you left, you were so weak. And now you feel like you're fine. By the time I reached school, I was really fine. But she told me at that point when she said we can't find anything, I was really, really so demoralized. Tears ran down because I was desperate to find out what's wrong with me. But she said something that was so positive. And then she said, Mona, I understand the frustration, but I think I'm going to recommend for you to see Professor. And I was like, okay, Professor, who is Professor? She actually used a short term she said Prof. She said, you're going to see Prof. And I'm like, okay, who is this person? And she said, well, he's actually the proprietor of this hospital. Unfortunately, he has passed since. May his soul rest in peace, Professor Kanyerezi. So she said, next week you're going to come here on a Thursday and I've made an appointment for you and you're going to see Prof. I've written an extensive, because I've looked at your history, your medical file here. And she said, I think this is the person who is really going to help you. And I promise you'll be fine. I don't know whether it was the voice or it was the confidence with which she spoke to me, but that gave me a lot of hope.
Yeah, we all need the hope.
She didn't even say that this is what I've discovered, but she just said, you are going to see him. Be here next week. Be here at 7 because usually he sees people and first come, first serve, and make sure you're the first person here so that when he comes, he sees you. And she said, I'll make sure he gets your file. I've written and I'm going to put a note in it so that he can come and see you. So next Thursday, like clockwork, I was there, ready to meet the prof.
Yeah.
So I was early. I waited for him. He came in usually. I think on that day he came in at around 10:30. I was there at 7 in the morning. I didn't mind the waiting because I was eager to find out, okay, what is Prof going to do? And then when he went in, took his time, I think. And then later on, like 15 minutes later, he came out and said, Mona. And then I went in. And then he said, I'm sorry, I took some time. I wanted to look at your medical record because the doctor sent it to me and I had to read it and then he said, okay, now I'm done reading it. So he said, look, let's sit on the side. You know, usually when you go to see a doctor, they're going to bring out their stethoscopes, they're going to bring out the temperature readers, they're going to do the pressure checks and the like. He didn't do all that at the time. He went from behind his desk, brought his chair, and then he sat with me. And I think I spent around 1.5 hours just chatting with him. Yeah. And that for me kind of was a bit already revealing that, okay, well, whatever it is that I'm having with this professor is very unusual. Because when we go to see our doctors, we know what's going to happen. We know the drill. You know, they'll draw blood, they'll do this and that. He wasn't even saying, let's do some blood work or whatever. And he took time and said, okay, Mona, I really want to kind of understand who you are as a person. I want to know the Mona, behind the name and the like. And then we started having a conversation. And I really mean a deep conversation. He was interested in the kind of work I do. He asked me about my family. And he wasn't like he's just listening from one side. It was really a conversation. He would ask me about my family. Then he tells me about his family. He would ask me about the work that I do. And then he tells me about the work that he does. And at the end of the conversation, He said, Mona, I'm going to tell you about two things. He said, the first, about my family. And he said, it's very unfortunate that our education systems have trained all our children and most people to just be people who want to go and seek jobs and do jobs and the like. And when you go to do a job, you don't dictate the terms of how you work and the like. So you have to adapt to the environment and the circumstances under which you work. And he said, for me, my children work, and they work maybe not even in this country. And I'm like, yes, they earn a lot of money. But he told me something that was so fundamental. He said, one of my children came back and started, I don't remember if it's a she or he, said, this child started their own business and said, frankly speaking, this person could be earning the less money compared to the rest of the siblings. But in my own book, this is the most independent person. And he said, sometimes when we choose to do the work can take a toll on us.
Yeah.
And for me, that was kind of like a lesson. And then he said, sometimes when you choose to do the work, be careful that the work doesn't suck you in, or that it doesn't really take all the independence from you and the like. And then, so we had this conversation. And then afterwards, he said, now that I've talked to you, I'm going to prescribe some medication. Mm-hmm. I want you to take it religiously. And then he prescribed, you have to do a lot of exercising. He said, I want you to change your routine. If you've not been going to the gym, start doing that. If you've been doing ABC, start XYZ. Shift your mindset and do this and the other. But then he said, then I'm going to see you in about 45 days. And then we'll have another conversation. And these conversations continued because I saw him for almost like about between 6 and 8 months. And I would always go back and we have these chats and we have the conversation.
That was on a monthly basis?
That was every after like either 45 days or 60 days. And the first time when I saw him, afterwards he asked me, do you eat well? Yes. Apart from the headaches, what else do you feel and the like? And then afterwards, he gave me a prescription. Up until that time, he did not say anything about what the issue was, But I was so...
Weren't you inquisitive?
In my head.
Ask?
In my head, I was, but I was hesitant to ask.
Why were you hesitant? What was scary?
I don't want to kind of generalize it, but I think it's more of a social kind of setup where usually here in Uganda, when you're sick, you leave everything to the doctor to tell you the bad news, the good news, the unfortunate.
Are you serious?
And yeah. I think it's a lot to do with, but at this point I was in a state where I was listening more to what he's saying, and I really enjoyed the conversation. And like, so afterwards, when I didn't see, he took my pressure and he said, your blood pressure is really normal. Your temperature is okay. And said, yeah, we'll do something about the headaches and the like. So he said, I'm going to prescribe medicine for you. And for me, I wasn't even in a position where I was going to be, say, like, but this is very unconventional. Because a doctor would do this, they would send me to the lab and the like. And it seems like your entire procedure of treating someone is having conversations and the like. Remember, I had taken years, like a couple of years, walking into the hospital, seeing doctors who only tell you, I don't see anything.
And that's it.
And then you go home and you wait for the next kind of feeling and the like. And you resist as much as possible until it's really uncomfortable. And then you force yourself going back to hospital. So when I went to the pharmacy to pick my prescription, this is where I found a lady who I had met before in that same hospital. So she takes my prescription and she says, Mona, she's looking at the prescription and trying to pick the medicines. And then she turns around and looks at me and says, hey, what is going on with you? And then I'm like, oh, okay. And she has this kind of look and curious
like, this is
voice.
Part of the bad news.
I mean, I was like, look, Prof just gave me a prescription and I spent an hour and a half closely, probably 2 hours. When I came out, I brought the prescription, but he did not tell me that this and that. And she said, yeah, I understand that. But Mona, the medication that you're being given for is for someone who is having serious depression and anxiety. You know? And she said, my concern is the combination of both is not a good thing for you. What is going on? What is bringing on all this stress and what? You need to let go of things and the like. Again, another very interesting conversation.
It's a lot of information just thrown at you.
Exactly. But it wasn't like I was receiving it in a way that it's scaring me. I was like, oh, okay. So this is actually what's going on. So for the first time, I was hearing words in my ears that no one has ever attributed to me.
Yeah.
That, Mona, you're depressive. Mona, you have anxiety, And as bad as it would seem, even if frankly it wasn't bad, because now I knew, it was kind of like something that I wanted to hear, because then now I know, and I want to move forward from this point knowing exactly what's going on. And I took my medication. Honestly, it helped with the headaches. They went away. But the subsequent visits with conversations with Prof, I got to learn more and more into this journey, because that's when I started really understanding the situation regarding my condition. I started understanding that, look, I can give you medication, because there was a day when I went in and I really had this bad head. It was like in those 6-8 months, I would always take these small tablets, one a day.
Yeah.
And the day would be fine. Everything is okay. The day I would run out of that small tablet, my headaches would just set off. It's like they've been waiting. They've been in a store and now they just set off, and then I have to run back. And one day I went in with this very, very bad headache, and he told me, "You're not taking any medication today."
Ouch.
And I was like, but I need it. I need this medication. He said, no, you don't need it. And he told me, "I'll tell you why you don't need this medication." He said, "Mona, number one, with this medication, it can easily become addictive. And right now you are with a mindset that where you're thinking that you are dependent on this medication. And that's not the point." But I told him, "But I have a headache. It's really bad." And said, yeah, I understand. But you have now to understand that you have to kind of train your body and put yourself in a state where you don't have to be dependent on this medication." And said, "That's number one. Number two, and this is very important, you need to begin realizing and taking accountability of," because he said, "This is just medication." He said, "But the real problem that sets off these headaches and creates this problem is out there. So you have to deal with the issues that surround you that set off these headaches and the like." And he told me they are called triggers. So he said, you have to start learning which are these triggers that really bring about these situations so that you change those environments. And he told me, if it's work that's building on this pressure, you have to start seriously thinking if this is worth your life. And I promise you, and I can tell you right now, it's not. And he told me, "Mona, I've treated people for years and years, and some people have had what we call nervous breakdowns." So he told me, the thing about having a nervous breakdown is when it happens, there are chances, high chances, more than 99%, that you won't come from that fall. And he told me, even those people I've seen who've managed to come back, the 1% or the under 1%, I promise you they are never the same again. They've really, really, really lost a lot. So that was really for me a serious red flag, that you have to make fundamental changes in your life. You have to make fundamental decisions. And I think that helped a lot, because then, depending on the medication and the like, it didn't apply to me. And I was, I think, kind of like a good religious student or patient.
How did you survive the day?
No, on that day when
the very first time where
I had to live without taking any medication. I mean, the headaches didn't go away immediately, but I had to believe. I had to have this self-belief that actually this is how it has to be. And the thing is that would really later on fundamentally change everything.
After how long was this? When he felt like, you know what, you're not going to take any more medication.
That was, I think, when we were heading into like the 8th month or 9th month. Because then it was like every time you go, you have to leave.
There was a refill.
Very happy with your refill. And at this point he said, "No, you're not taking any medication. None, zero." And he said, "Focus on the things that you can do. Health, you have to sleep well." And I think he told me one of the problems that was triggering on the headaches was the abnormal sleeping. There was a sleeping disorder. And so he was telling me, when you do a lot of gym work, it can help you. When you do a lot of engagements and like, it can help you to have better sleep, a better rest and like. So there were a lot of things that I had to adjust and learn how to do. And gradually it helped. But I think...
Do you remember how long it took for you to do now the personal work without medication?
Without medication. Yeah, it took like about, to be quite honest, to be completely zero, that I don't depend on the on anything. No, to reach a point where you don't feel any signs or any symptoms. It took about 6 months to a year. And even with that, you cannot say that it's completely out.
Right.
The difference, however, was that everything that would come on as an onset, you could pick immediately and you say, this week I had a headache for 2 days, but I know where this headache is coming from. Like, you know your body, but at the same time, you think through, okay, what is it that has really now kind of set off this trigger?
You have to be aware of the environmental factors as well.
Exactly. And I think just thinking through that alone helps you to build that consciousness in your system, in your body.
Become more mindful.
Exactly. And I think for me, that was by far, and I think that's what the late Professor Kanyerezi referred to. For me, that was by far kind of like the, I know what's going on, you know. And in some cases, sometimes disappointments, pressures and the like, you can't avoid this as long as you are living, breathing human being. So sometimes when these conditions or symptoms come on, it's easy for me to register, number one, and number two, to say, okay, I know why this is happening. And you need, because then you realize that, okay, just like everyone else, these are my vulnerabilities as a person. Yeah. How do I take on pressure? How do I deal with this and that and the other? And then you know how to take care of yourself. And for me, really, that has been the journey. But what really impacted me so much to say, I really want to talk about this, was the experience I went through. And then I looked back and I said, but wait a minute. I am one person who has been privileged that for as long as I've worked in an organizations that can afford to give me better Medicare cover. So I would take my medical insurance cards and go to the best hospitals, really, and see the doctors who are willing to spend more time and talk to you and the like. Now, looking back, I thought, okay, what does it mean for people who even fear to go to hospitals because they can't afford consultation? That becomes the first point, consulting and find out what's going on. And for me, I felt this is one of the biggest problems that we have, because my experience with discovering that after 3-4 years, despite going to the best hospitals, no one was identifying what my problem was. And then later on, one doctor looks at the history of my file and says, I think you need to talk to someone. You need to talk to the professor. You know, in my head, I was like, why did it take this long? Secondly, I asked myself, the physicians and the doctors we go to see, how many of them can look at a person, listen to whatever is going on? Do they even have the time to listen to the patient and say...
It's about prescriptions.
Yeah, exactly. and I don't say this to paint a negative picture to our medical professionals.
No, but we can't hide from the truth.
Exactly. For me, what becomes apparent is we have several layers that we can talk about. Number one, in this country, that around this year in May, a statistic came out that shocked everyone, that Uganda has 14 million people with mental illness issues. 14 million? You ask yourself, Uganda is a country where more than 85% of the entire population of more than 45 million people are in rural areas. And when we talk about Medicare and health coverage in this country, people who are up country, they don't get the same services as people who are in urban areas. And that's not to say that people in the urban areas can even afford the medical bills, because a lot of people who go to hospitals, they would rather go and pay. Consultation will always be between, and now I'm talking about consultations for psychiatrists and all these people, counselors and the like. It will probably be between 50 upwards ends of 300,000 or more. I wouldn't know, but I know it's between 50 and upwards. And I know for sure if you tell an average Ugandan to go for a consultation of 50,000, majority of them will not go simply because they don't have the money. Okay? But that is the first when we talk about the socioeconomic. The second for me, which is very important, is I think we really have a serious problem when you go back to the statistic of how many people have mental health issues in this country. There are so many. And here, I don't want to sound like an expert and the like. When we talk about mental health in Uganda, someone will ask you the question, what exactly are you talking about? Because from a layman's point of view, and that for me is another problem, if you say mental health, if you go on the streets and ask anyone or in the communities that show me a picture of mental illness, they'll show you a naked person, someone who all of a sudden starts plucking out their hair and the like, someone who they see they were normal one day and the other day they are running off the streets, running into cars and the like. And that's as far as it goes. Then the stigma sets in. The moment you say the word mental health next to a name, people are like, oh, seriously? And for me, personally, with this journey of what I went through, I realized, okay, we have a serious problem. Number one, there are so many people, and the statistic has already established that. But if people do not understand what mental health is as number one, and I myself, even as a person who has lived through this, I don't understand it, how are we supposed to help our people in the communities? Because what occurred to me in this experience, my own personal experience, was there are a lot of people who are struggling and they don't even know what their problem is. Right. And for me, that's really what scares me. Mm-hmm. And when you talk about people, you're really talking about all levels, all classes, all social classes. You will talk about children in schools who go through different circumstances. They'll end up with mental health issues, and we don't even know what this means. And they are in school environments where they spend most of their time. And I can say confidently, how many teachers in this country? So as I was saying, that if you look at our teachers, again, a group of heroes who work with the children, how many of them are equipped to know that I can pick this sign or that sign and say, maybe this child needs a counselor, maybe this child needs to be referred? Go into the so-called corporate world, go into the so-called social setting or communities where if you talk about gender-based violence, if you talk about all kinds of circumstances. So my message would be that we need to be in a place where, number one, people, and I mean society, I mean parents, I mean teachers, I mean employers, and most especially the decision makers and the government. We need to be in a place where people can really say, what can we do? If it's a parent in this country, they should be given the basic knowledge of what they should look out for.
With their children.
With their children. If it's an employer, we need to have simple measures in place where someone can work comfortably and not go into a company and come out with a mental health issues. Because again, in our ignorance, there are so many people you find and they shock you and they say, oh, if you're saying you have a mental health issue, maybe it's in your bloodline. Not knowing that a work environment can really make you sick. Can make you develop all these kinds of problems. And for me, I think those are the kinds of levels of awareness that I would want to see, I would wish that people can pick on, but then most importantly, that the different segments of our society can really take this as one of those silent epidemics where we can do something and I think help a lot of people.
Right.
Yeah.
What message would you want the listener to walk away with?
I would want someone who is listening to understand that among the so many issues and challenges that we have in our society, when we talk about mental health, please walk away from the usual face that other people have kind of put across this word mental health. The stigma that a person who is running without clothes or whatever, what they usually term as a mad woman, a mad man, a mad child, or whatever, people throwing stones, that this is where it ends. Mental health is everywhere and it doesn't have a specific face.
Right.
And I think when we say mental health, people should not stigmatize it, but they should look at it in a positive way, that actually what mental health means is that when you talk about the health and well-being of every individual, their mental health is very, very important. And if you don't watch out, it can really get affected. Or if someone is already developing a problem, then they need to be helped. And I think if everyone can develop that consciousness, you will very soon discover that given our statistics, in your family, in a circle of friends, in your place of work, there are already people who are struggling with a lot of issues. And you don't need to be the expert. All you need to be is be conscious, be aware, educate yourself on this issue, and you'll see a lot of telltale signs, and then you can begin to play a supportive role within your community. Make it a better place so that people can live healthy.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
What I'm walking away with from this episode is that I have to be more mindful when it comes to both my inner and outward environmental factors. What is around me and how my inner world responds to that are things I'm supposed to give so much attention. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Hashtag with Namguze Chwanka. If you loved what you heard, make sure you subscribe to Hashtag with Namguze Chwanka in your podcast platform of choice and share it with your friends, loved ones, and everyone that you believe is affected by the millennial world around us. Also, feel free to share your insights about what connected with you on social media and be sure to tag us. We are at Hashtag with Namguze Chwanka on Facebook and Instagram, and on Twitter our handle is at HTNK Podcast, or use the hashtag HTNK in session. If you are in search of mental health professional help, don't hesitate to reach out on my email namguzi@namguzechwanka.com. I will be very glad to pair with you with the right persons. And for more mindful conversations, don't hesitate to check out namguzechwanka.com. Welcome to the new month, and I implore you to be more mindful throughout these 30 days. Okay, now we're left with 29. Yes, be more mindful.